notice they had to go to other places. I hope that they'll be able to watch this on the video because they're going to learn a lot. The coolest thing about the InDesign stuff is that it started to show up on job notices. People saying that they were looking for someone who actually knew how to use InDesign, Photoshop, Illustrator. If you've got this, that's a really cool thing. So this is a great opportunity for you. But I promised you I would start with the last little bit of Word. Okay. All right, so there are three things I'm going to talk about today. Two of them are listed on the screen. The third I'll have to actually show you, but I think you'll be very pleased with what this tool allows you to do. So we'll start by taking a look at wrapping text in Word. And this is what we mean when we talk about wrapping text. It means that the text goes around some kind of an image or around some kind of a shape. And it's possible to do this in Word. Here I've got a star shape and the text wraps around it. And what a reader would have to do would be to read across the star. These are not separate columns. They look like separate columns, but they're not. But you could do something like this if you didn't have a lot of text, a limited amount of text, it might work. This is far more typical, an illustration, rectangular, with a caption and a credit line in the middle of the text. And the text wraps around it. And there's a border here. Notice that there's white space. That's an important thing. We'll talk about that in a little bit. It's possible to do this in Word. It's clunky in Word. It's not intuitive at all. When we get to InDesign, you are going to be amazed at what you can do in InDesign compared to what you can do in Word. But it's there for you, and look at how much better this looks than the typical student paper that I get, which has text, picture, big empty space, more text. Sometimes Word can't figure out how to get it all on one page, and that'll be the end of the page right there. Just a lot of empty space. So being able to use this text wrap feature is going to make all of your documents look a lot better. The first thing you need to do is to click on the image. So let's say that you've imported some kind of a photograph, some kind of a symbol, whatever it is. You click on that, and what will happen almost immediately is that you will see this pop up. It's a format menu, and it's called Picture Tools. It'll give you a whole variety of tools that you can use to format that picture, and one of them is right here. It's called Wrap Text, and it gives you a whole bunch of different options for wrapping the text around the image. There are a bunch of defaults here. If you know you want all the pictures to be in the top left corner, you can just click on that, let the computer figure it out, and the text will wrap around it. So you could use the defaults if you want. You can arrange them if you wish, whole bunch of different ways. Let me show you what these different things look like. If you click on that Layout tab, it'll give you several options. They've got, I think, 7 here. All right, I'll go through. I think I'm just going to talk about 4 or 5 of them, and then I'll tell you a little bit about what text wrap means and what distance from text means, so you can see how that works. This is what they call inline with text. So this is pretty much the way most of my students do it. They insert a picture, and then they keep writing. And what happens is that you wind up with this big, wide, empty space over there. Look at that guy. Can you believe that guy? Unbelievable. That would be 30 years ago. Yeah. All right. And it looks like this. There's a black dog, and you can see the big space next to it. That's called inline with text. All right. Next, square. So the text starts over here, and again, it picks up on the other side. All right. I put the picture in the center. You could certainly align it with the left margin, align it with the right margin, because what's happening, look, is that you've got a square picture. You're creating new alignments. You're actually creating new alignments if you just have the picture there. nothing lines up with this, and there's no reason for it to be there. So generally speaking, if you do the square, either a line left or a line right, if you do a line center, have some reason for aligning the picture in the center. Okay? The next one is called wrap tight. And in this case, I put the picture inside of a circle, and you can see that Word was able to figure out over here how to wrap the text around the circle. It does a better job on this side than it does on this side. Can you see that? This is still going to be raggedy because it's still worried about the left edge there, the left margin. But you can do something like that. Again, you're interrupting the reader. In brief, theism represents that they're going to have to read across the image. So again, as I said with the rectangle, if you put it back against one of the margins, it'll probably work better. But you can do that sort of thing. Top and bottom, just what it says. All right, now the next part over here, I'm not going to talk about tight or through because they're not, I'm not going to talk about behind text or in front of text because you could probably figure out what behind text means. Yeah, okay. Now what I am going to talk about is this part here, wrap the text. You can tell Word that you only want to wrap the text around both sides of the image or just around the left side, just around the right side. Or let Word figure out which is the largest and wrap it around that. So those are the choices you have if you decide to use that. You don't have to. It's an option. This one over here, this is one that determines the padding. It determines how much of that white space you leave around the image. And the purpose for leaving the white space, first of all, it makes the text more readable. But secondly, the more white space you leave, the more important the object inside that white space becomes. You start creating more of a hierarchy. So here white space becomes a friend. The defaults, I think this is defaults. I did this on, I'm not sure, I don't remember which computer I did it on. But it looks like the default here, left and right, is 0.13 inches. I'm not sure why that's a default, but there you go. If you change these things, you wind up with a much bigger default. And you can see that I've got a lot more extra space around the image. Now the image is inside this black box with a dotted line. All right? And then this represents the frame that it's sitting in. And these dotted lines represent where the wrap is taking place. All right? And then finally, you do have this option in Word. Only do this if you've got a lot of time and a lot of patience, because it doesn't always work. I fiddled with this thing for quite a while, never really got it to look terribly good. But it is possible by clicking, you pull down this menu over here, right? Our old friend text wrap, and you click on tight because you do want to wrap it tight, but then you tell it that you want to edit the wrap boundary. Now this red line represents the wrap boundary, and theoretically all of this text should come over here in front of that, but it doesn't. I probably should have tried some of the others in front of text, behind text to see if one of the others worked. But it is possible to change the shape of the wrap, and you can actually add points. You can add boundary points. All you do is click on the red line, and you can add a boundary point, and then you can pull it or push it, move it any which way you want. When we get to InDesign, you're going to be astounded to see how much easier it is to do that in InDesign. It can be done in Word, takes a lot of patience though. All right? Second thing about Word, it is possible to link text boxes. And by linking text boxes, what we're saying is that we have a box that has text, and when you reach the end and you're ready to go to the next part, you can create a separate text box, and this text box can be moved anywhere on this page or any other page. And this text box will lead into the next text box. All right? If you've ever filled an ice cube tray, you know how to fill an ice cube tray? You start at one end, the water flows down, down, down. That's what we're doing here. That's my metaphor for how this works. This is very much the way all of InDesign works. This only does this in Word when you specifically set it up to do this. And the way you do that is by going to the Help menu and typing in creating linked text boxes. Because there's no way I'm going to read through 9 sets of instructions for something that you'll probably never use. But if you're interested, linked text boxes can be done in Word. There's a whole way of doing it. You go under the draw a text box, and you select the first one, and then you get a format ribbon. And in the format ribbon, you'll see something that looks like a link chains, 3 links of a chain. That's how you can create the links. All right? That's as far as I'm going to go with that. So there's 2 new things that we didn't talk before about in terms of Word. So now I'm going to show you the magic. And I'm happy to say that this is one of those presentations where I usually get a round of applause. Notice that my fingers never leave my hands. All right, so here we have a very typical kind of studentish paper about War of 1812, causes of conflict, blah, blah, blah. All right, and we want to add to this citations. We have been told by our professors that we need to use APA style to cite sources, and that's what we're going to do. So we're going to come over to the References tab up on top over here. All right, and you can see right over here we have footnotes, citations and bibliography, and captions, index. All right, footnotes. We use footnotes in academia when we have something extra to say. So you would use a footnote, for example, if you wanted to point out to your professor that you read another book that said the first guy was wrong. All right, or you might want to put a footnote in to indicate that there's some extra information. You don't want to interrupt the reader in the middle, but you do want your professor to know how smart you really are. So you put in footnotes. Citations is how you tell your professor where you found all of this information that you've put into your document. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to, let's see, put a footnote. These threats were met during the undeclared quasi-war with France. Okay, I need to tell my professor how I know that. Right? Because I didn't just make that up. I read that someplace. So I'm going to insert a citation. And I go over here and insert a citation. And the first thing you have to do is to add a new source. Okay? Now, when I add a new source, I want to make sure that I follow the citation style. And the way you do that is by going over here under Styles. And you can see that in Word, you have the option of any of these different styles. For example, if you were an electrical engineer and you were writing for one of the IEEE publications, you would want to use the IEEE style. In engineering, we use APA, the American Psychological Association. Does anybody know why we use APA format in engineering? Okay, you want me to solve the mystery for you? I would be happy to do that. Why would we pick that? We picked that one because it's done by date. It's done by date. You folks are working in a field that changes literally day by day. From one day to the next, they're inventing something new, trying out a new process, and the date is the most important thing. So what you need to show your professors is not that you read a book about concrete written in 1923, but that you read one that was written on September 23rd, 2015. And that's how you do that. You sort it by date. The other ones that we use here at the university, there are departments that use MLA, the Modern Library Association, the Harvard style, the Chicago style, but the one we use is APA, and that's the one you need to make sure is selected up there. Then you can come here under Insert Citation, and it will be all set up for APA. So I will insert a source. What am I referring to? I'm referring to the Quasi-War with France, and that was in a book. Your other choices are book section, journal article, article in a periodical, conference proceedings, report, and it goes on and on and on, all the other things that you can cite in APA style. All right, but we'll stick with the book. Books are simple. And who wrote this wonderful book? Jackson Phil. All right, and the name of the book was All I Know About France. and the year it was published was 2011, and the city it was published in, the publishing capital of the world, Milton, Wisconsin. Okay, does anybody know why they want to know the city in which it was published? Does anybody know the reason for that? Did your 397 profs talk about this at all? No. Oh, you missed a good part of your education there, folks. All right. The very fast version of why anybody cares what city it was published in is that in the old days, if you wrote something and you wanted to get it published, especially in the 13 American colonies where there were terrible roads, you didn't simply go to a publisher and say, print 500 copies of this book and I'll take them around and sell them. The publisher would say, show me the money. So what you'd have to do is you'd have to come up with money to pay for the printing. And the way you would do that would be to make up a big handbill, and you could write these out by hand, and you would put them up in taverns. Yes, great American tradition. Where do we meet and greet? Now, if it was a collection of great sermons by a noted preacher, then you put it up in church. Anything else you would put up in the tavern. Or good idea to advertise in both places, because many of the same people went to both places. So you would tell people, subscribe to a new copy of my thoughts about the world of ancient Greece. It'll be £1, 6 shillings per copy. I'll be the guy sitting in the far table in the tavern. And you go over there, and people would give you £1, 6 shillings, and you take their name. And after you had enough money, you would scoop it up and take it over to the print shop, and you would hand the printer your manuscript, and the typesetters would set it, and they'd print it, and everybody would get a subscription, and any money that was left over, you get to keep. Isn't that nice? Yeah. Then you would get back on your horse, and you would ride to Boston, and you do the same thing in Boston. And then you get back on your horse, and you go to New Haven, and you do the same thing in New Haven. And you get back on your horse, and you'd ride to New York City, and you do the same thing there. And in each place, a typesetter would typeset the manuscript. Guess what happens when different people typeset the same manuscript? There are going to be differences. Slight differences, maybe unimportant differences. Maybe on the road from New Haven to New York, you suddenly got a brilliant idea and inserted a new paragraph. But the issue that was put out in New York is different from the one that was published in New Haven, and that's why people care about the city. The end. Thank you, Professor Ross. This was all his teaching. He taught me this. I didn't know this. All right. And the publisher was the big publishing company known as the Amazon Pubco. All right. One of the things you'll notice is that as I was typing, look what happened over here. It created a little tag. All right? And that's the tag. I can actually use that tag if I want to insert a citation by hand. I don't know why I would want to do that. But watch what happens over here. This is where the cursor was, right? Over there, see there? Watch what happens when I click OK. There's my citation. Perfect APA style. The only thing that's missing over here is the page number. And I'll need to put that in. All right? You can do this with just about anything. Trading with the enemy. How do you know about trading with the enemy? Insert citation. New source. Okay, this is from a journal article. And the author was and the title of the article was and I'm not reading these out loud. Did you notice that? All right, and this one was published in 2015. And this is on pages 45 through 55. Okay, so this will insert it right in there, and there's my citation. Okay? Now, what you need to do at the very end, of course, is you need to have a references page, right? Because that's what your professor told you. So we'll insert a page break. Where are my glasses? Breaks. Where do we have the breaks here? Where am I looking? Where are they hiding page break here? This is strange. I don't remember where it is. Does anybody remember where it lives here? Here it is. Page break, under pages. All right, so now I'm at the top of a new page down here. And this is where I want to have my references. I'll go back into references. Now, you can have a bibliography. A bibliography is what you put in to show your professor everything you read, whether you used it or not. It shows that you did a lot of research. References only refers to the things that you actually did inside the document. So I'm just going to click on this word references over here, and there's my APA references. This is what computers were born to do, folks. Stupid work that humans shouldn't have to be bothered with. How much time did you spend learning about the parentheses and the semicolons and the underlining and the right? Yeah, you see why I get a round of applause? Come on. Do you know how much time I just saved you? Yeah, okay, guys. All right. It is time to enter the wonderful world of InDesign. So you have a lot of this stuff. It's in the student handbook. You can follow along if you wish. I made it as up-to-date as I could. And you can see the up-to-dateness of this. When I first started teaching this course, it was called it was called Aldus PageMaker. And they changed, Adobe bought Aldus. So that was where it started out. PageMaker, we got to InDesign with the second version. The CS stands for Creative Suite. Because what Adobe did was they put together InDesign with Photoshop. And then they added Illustrator, then they added a whole bunch of others. But I've been here, this is how long I've been teaching this thing. All the way through 3 and 4. We never bothered to get 5. 5 only lasted about 3 months before they came out with 5.5. Can you guess why? Yeah, computer engineers. You love those guys, right? All right. Then they came out with CS6, and before CA even had a chance to buy it, they came up with CC. They replaced Creative Suite with Creative Cloud. And the idea is that all of this stuff comes to us from somewhere up there, and I will teach you the appropriate incantations and prayers to make things come down from up there. So, we now have Creative Cloud. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Adobe Bridge. I'll talk about why bother to use this thing, why bother to learn it, and then I'll give you some of the basics. We'll see how far we get. If we get that far, we'll keep moving through InDesign. All right, so this is where you're going to find it. You'll go down into the lower left-hand corner of the screen where you've got the little Windows button, and you'll open up Programs, and you will find, this is the CS4. Now you can find CC in there, and that's what you need to do, open up the CC, and that's how you can get it. And you can see that in the package, it includes Dreamweaver, Fireworks, Flash, Flash Player, Illustrator, InDesign, and Photoshop. These 3 are used for creating documents. The rest of this stuff is used for creating websites and things that are going to be seen on a screen. So there's a difference here. Adobe acquired these things, and it's been struggling for years to get them all to fit together. There. So the first thing I'm going to talk to you about is the Bridge, Adobe Bridge. If you open up the Bridge, it gives you it's a very good way for people who are using Windows computers to get from one part to another. If you have an Apple, it's so simple it's not even necessary. But if you're using a Windows computer, this is a really good thing to do. I should mention that unlike Word, the Apple version of InDesign and the Windows version of InDesign are almost identical. Almost identical. There's only one tiny little difference that I ever found. But otherwise, if you learn one, you can use the other. This has been a great blessing for me, who works on an Apple in my office and has to teach you guys how to use Windows computers here. So I keep switching back and forth. The bridge thing is great. It acts as an actual bridge between InDesign, Photoshop, Illustrator, and the others. And the idea is that you can create an image, a drawing or something in Illustrator. You can add it to a photograph in Photoshop, and then you can dump both of those into a document in InDesign. And this bridge thing lets you go back and forth. It has some other applications inside of Bridge. It has Photoshop processing. Some of the things that you can do in Photoshop to edit pictures, you can actually do in Bridge. So if you don't feel like opening up Photoshop, you can work in Bridge, and it'll let you make some adjustments to pictures, particularly brightening, contrast, filtering, some other stuff. None of the real fancy effects, but the basic stuff. If you've got a whole batch of pictures that are too dark, you can increase the exposure on the whole batch. It lets you do batch processing, and that's a good thing. All right? It's also got the ability to create a photo gallery. So let's say you've taken a dozen pictures and you've got a website and you want to put up all 12 pictures on the website. You create something called a slideshow or a photo gallery. It's very, very easy to do in Bridge. Very, very simple. You literally press 2 buttons and you've got yourself. You can add a lot of fancy effects. You can add music. So you take pictures at your brother-in-law's wedding, your brother's wedding, your sister's, it would be your sister's wedding. Yeah, or your sister gets a brother-in-law, right? Okay. So you take pictures at the wedding and you want to put the pictures up and you want to put some hokey music behind it. This is one way to do it. All right? And then photo metadata. Now, every time you take a picture with a digital camera, the camera not only records the pixels or that come in through the lens, but somewhere in that file is information about the camera that you used, the settings that you had on that camera. It may include whatever adjustments that you made. The newer cameras, the fancier cameras, have built-in GPS. And you can actually locate where you took that picture on the face of the earth. Even better ones have a built-in, believe it or not, a built-in compass. So it can tell you that you were pointing due north when you took this photo. Isn't that cool? So there are a whole bunch of different things. That's called metadata. You can add to that. So if you want to, let's say you want to remember that you took all these pictures of somebody named Henry, you can drop that into the metadata, and then when you do a search on your computer, you look for Henry, these pictures will show up. A whole bunch of different things you can do there. So a whole lot of things that you can do with the Bridge. And we're going to come back to the Bridge when we start working with photographs, because this is one of the first tools that you'll be using when we work with photographs. To access it from InDesign, at the very top of the application, the top part of InDesign is called the application bar. Right over here, it's got a little ID, InDesign. Here's the Bridge. You click that button, you instantly go to the Bridge. Now, in the CC version, it's slightly different. There's a button at the bottom, but it'll work either way. Same thing. I'll tell you more about the application bar in just a minute or two. You don't need to know this other stuff right now. All right. This is what comes up when you have the Bridge that's open. Just this little boomerang. That means go back to the last thing you were in, which was Photoshop. Number 2, this is downloading pictures from a camera, and you can put them into a separate file if you want. If you're using something like iPhoto or Photos or whatever filing system you have on your computer, this will save those pictures to that folder. Number 3 is review mode. It's renaming things, file info, a whole bunch of things about the pictures. And then this one that looks like an iris goes to camera raw. And I think I talked a little bit about that. I'll talk more about it when we get to photography stuff. All right? You also have a number of different workspaces that you can use. A whole bunch of different things. You can look at it as though it were a film strip. You can use it as a light table. All the kinds of things that photo editors use these things for. Again, I'll show you more of these things when we get down there. This is the metadata view. if you're curious, here's a bunch of photos. You can see there are numbers. This is the date the picture was taken and when, the size of the image, what type of image it is, how it was taken, when it was modified, the resolution of the image. A lot of image information about the picture is stored with the picture in there. All right? And you can go back to Photoshop, you can go back to Illustrator, lots of different things you can do. I'm not going to spend any more time. Let's hear it for InDesign. All right. So what this thing does is it does everything that a word processor does. You can create tables, you can create an index, table of contents, footnotes, spell checking, all of this other stuff. That's what we use these things for. All right, if you're just going to type, that's typing. You can do that. And if that's what your professor wants, by all means, that's what you give them. What this thing does, the great thing about InDesign is that it is absolutely superb at combining text and graphics. So if you've got an image, you want to put a caption under it, you want to put some call-outs on it, you want to put a credit line alongside it, you want to have two images side by side, very, very easy to do with InDesign, and it interfaces with Photoshop beautifully. So you can easily go back and forth between the two. Okay? InDesign is really good for long documents. All right, so if you will have to write something and it's going to be more than 2, 3, 4 pages, and you're thinking you're going to have section heads and you want them all to look the same, you're going to start thinking about styles. If you have to insert a whole bunch of equations, if you have to insert a whole bunch of photographs of CAD drawings, of maps, of whatever it is, then you start thinking InDesign is going to work better than Word. Because you've probably tried to drop pictures into Word, and you know that sometimes it does what you want and sometimes it doesn't. InDesign gives you a lot more precise control. One of the other things that are really good about this is look at the Save As options. All right, this is something you won't find in Word. If you are working, if you want to create PDFs, you can do that. If you're just going for electronic publishing, look at the different formats that we have for electronic publishing. You can publish it. You can publish the entire document as a picture, as a JPEG, if you want to do it that way. That's how the terrorists do it, by the way. Okay, they don't want the government to read what they've written. They save the whole thing as a picture, and then they send the photograph. Because all of the government scanners can't, it just looks like a picture of a guy standing in front of the Eiffel Tower, All right, what can I tell you? Flash Player is for online stuff. HTML turns the whole thing into a document that can actually be part of a website. XML is the version. If you have a Word document that's saved as a docx, that's using XML. It's a markup language. And PNG is also an image. Word is better than InDesign. If it's a one-shot document and you need to do it fast, you open Word, start typing, boom, you're done. Just please change it from Calibri to something nice, okay? That's all I don't ask for a lot. Okay. Anything you want to share with other writers. If you have to share, if there are going to be more than one author, Word, everybody knows Word. It's much easier to share Word documents. How many people here have tried Google Drive? Okay, is it easy to share? Did you find that it was easy to share? Because it's pretty much Word, without any of the bells and whistles. All right, very kind of basic stuff. All right, but if you want to share, if you want other people to be able to edit it and work with it, you're probably better off going with Word. And the stuff that I just showed you about the citations, you can't do that in InDesign. InDesign doesn't have that built in. I don't know why. Isn't that ridiculous? So if I were doing this or doing an academic paper, believe it or not, I would write the whole thing in Word first. Then I would import it into InDesign with the citations and the references page. And then I would drop in the pictures and all that other good stuff. That's me, though. You'll have to figure it out. I mean, some things are better than others. All right. The keyboard shortcuts, this will make you insane. There are hundreds of menus in InDesign. The last time anybody counted, and it was a long time ago, there were over 800 different menus in InDesign. There are over 1,000 menus in Photoshop, and they're all going to be on the final. Did I scare you? Okay, no. Anybody who claims to know all the menus is lying to you. Just, they're not telling you the truth. Okay? But if you're interested in seeing them, you can see them. They're under the Edit menu, keyboard shortcuts. That's fine. Other stuff, laying out a periodical. Now, you got a magazine. Here's an example of a magazine just came out. And you'll notice that the formats for the magazines are all very, very similar. They use a template, and they do it in InDesign. InDesign is really good for that. Your student handbook was done in InDesign. I change it every semester for every course, and it's very easy for me to update it and change it. All I really do is, in most cases, go to the header and footer and change it from 2014 to 2015. And then I find all the places where my students didn't get it and rewrite those. And I'm ready for the next semester. There you go. All right? Customizable features. One of the things that InDesign does is that, in Word I showed you, it lets you create paragraph styles and character styles. InDesign goes way beyond that. You can customize just about anything. Anything that you use frequently, you can customize, you can create a template for it, and InDesign will just do it for you. And it goes way beyond Word. And finally, the neat thing is, as I mentioned, if I were writing something in Word and I decided I wanted to import it into InDesign, I can simply take the whole document and drop it into InDesign just the way I did it in Word. If I created styles in Word, I can import the same styles into InDesign. So let's say I had a section header that was red, bold, italics, with a semicolon, underline, shadow effect. What else do you guys love? All that good stuff, right? Using the famous unreadable font, right? I could dump that style right into my InDesign document. And InDesign has more fonts, which means it's more fun. All right. Precision control. This is where the maniacs come in, right? Stuff that you can control to 1/10,000th of an inch. You like that? You like that precision? The mechanical engineers go, yeah. But then they try to see it on the screen. You can't see it. All right, other stuff. The changing, you can take any letter, any character in InDesign, and you can change the size, the shape, the emphasis, the tracking, the kerning. In fact, you can actually pull a letter apart and rebuild it if you want to make it fancier or funkier looking. I'll show you how to do that too. You can't do that in Word. All right? Text and graphics, super, and then the color libraries. You've got a lot more than Bill Gates' selection of colors. Just an enormous selection of color libraries. All right, so I'll try to introduce a few things to you. Preferences stays the same. If you don't have InDesign on your own computer, you're stuck with the CAE version, and you can change preferences all you want. It won't stay. Did anybody here try to buy InDesign over at the Do It store? Theoretically, it's $20. I think you should try it and install it on your computer. They told me it's $20 and it's one shot and that's it. And you're all up to date with InDesign. I think the original plan was to keep updating it so you'd have to keep paying the money, but they don't keep updating it. So I think it's a good idea. Hey, she's off. She's ready to roll. Okay. You're gonna bring back an A for us, right?
I hope so.
Okay, kid. Good luck.
Thanks.
All right. So we'll talk a little bit about the preferences and changing the preferences. Next, they used to call them palettes, then they changed the name to panels. So you may find some older versions of instructions where they talk about palettes. They mean panels. And the panels are things that pop up. They're little windows that pop up, usually on the right-hand side, and they give you controls over things like characters and paragraphs and alignment and all that other good stuff. There's another strip. Most of the time you'll see it along the left-hand margin. It's called, well, it used to be called the toolbox. And then they didn't like that, so they called it the toolbar. Then they changed the name to the tools panel, and nowadays people just call it tools. But who knows? Just to show you that the terminology. So if I use the different term, that's what I'm talking about. All right. So on the Apple, you need to look under the InDesign menu, and that's where you'll find Preferences. On a Windows computer, you go under the Edit menu. And this, as far as I know, is the only real difference between the two. That's all I can tell you. All right? So to change the preferences, if there's no document open, and you just pull down the Preferences menu, the changes that you make on your computer, not on the CAE computers, but on your computer, will affect all the new documents that you open. So if you make a change, let's say your preference is, let's say you decide to change the units to millimeters. You've suddenly gone European and you've decided millimeters is the way to go. After that, everything's going to be millimeters until eventually one day you wake up and realize you want to change it to something like inches again, or kilometers, or whatever. Yeah, printers don't measure things in kilometers. Did I need to say that? All right. If a document is open, any changes that you make only affect that particular document. So they'll give you a set of different menus here, things you can change, and you can tell that they're menus because they've got the three dots, the ellipsis after them, and that's how you can change the preferences. This is what it's actually going to look like with the CC version. You'll have a set over here of categories. So let's say you want to turn the spell checker on, turn it off, tell it what to check for. You click over there. This is the interface. Now, when you turn on InDesign for the first time, the screen is going to be completely black. All right? For 30 years, starting with PageMaker, they always used light gray. And they decided with the CC version, it's going to be black, because it's a lot harder to read. Right? And they didn't want old people using it. Yeah. Okay, so the first thing I do when I have a new version is I go over here and I change the color theme to medium light, because then I can see what I'm looking at. You may decide to do that too. That might be a very good idea. Otherwise, I leave the other stuff pretty much the way it is. All right? One of the things that you might want to check and turn on is drag and drop. You've used the mouse all your life, right? I mean, is anybody here unfamiliar with a mouse? I mean, when I first started computing, we didn't have, it was before the mouse. But once Apple introduced the mouse, why would you ever spend your time typing when all you have to do is move the mouse and the cursor moves and it goes where you want and you go click and boom, there you are. So you definitely want to turn on drag and drop text editing. There are some designers who don't like that feature. They like to use keyboard shortcuts. So W3, Tab, Caps Lock, Shift, Alt, Delete, Enter, Up arrow. That does something. I don't know what it does. All right. Units. Okay, I come out of the printing world, so I switch everything to pikas and points. If you prefer inches, bless you, stay with inches. If you are very European, you may go with centimeters, millimeters, kilometers, whatever you like. All right? You can pull this thing down, you can change it. Now, believe it or not, they have the traditional PostScript style of 72 points per inch, but they also have the printer's PostScript style of 72.27 points per inch. I'm sure that makes a huge difference in somebody's life, but not mine. All right. Guides. When you open up a new page in InDesign, it's going to look like this. It's going to have a lot of stuff on it. And all of these different colored lines mean something, and so don't get scared. It actually tells you, if you click on Guides and Pasteboard, it'll tell you what it is you're looking at. The magenta are the margins of the text. The columns are violet. The bleed, they call it Fiesta. You know it as red. All right? And then the slug is a very pale blue. But this is what it's going to look like. The edge of the page is going to be this black line there. So the terminology, what is a slug? A slug is an editor's name for an article. So when you're assembling a periodical, and let's say you've got an article about professor profile, all right? So you might just call it prof. That's called the slug. And that'll show up at the top on every page that goes with that article. So an editor going through this thing can see what this article is. It's a nickname. That's what a slug is. The reason that you have a little extra space at the top there is because you don't want to actually print the word prof on the page. So this is off the page. This is the boundary of the page. The black line here is the boundary of the page, and the slug prints outside the boundary of the page. The bleed, we talked about this, is when you have an image that you want to go off the edge of the paper. You want the ink to run right up to the edge of the paper. The way you do that is that you trim the paper down. And the bleed line tells the printer that the ink needs to go up to there, but you're actually going to trim it to the black line. And you need to have bleed. The last issue of Wisconsin Engineer had some problems with the printer last week. I read some of the emails in which the printer said, "You didn't give me enough bleed." And what he was saying was that the images didn't come far enough off the page to make sure that when it trimmed on ink and not on white paper. Do you understand what I'm saying? Is that clear? All right. The next one up there is the margins. That's the limits of the area where the art, text, and images can be placed. Columns, of course, this is how you start creating your grid. And you have a choice when you set up a new InDesign page how many columns you want. And you remember what you call these things between the columns? Those are the alleys. You can decide how wide you want the alleys to be. So you have a lot of different options there. The edge of the page is the black line. They give it a little shadow effect so you can see it's a separate piece of paper. And you can see here the bleed runs all four sides on this page. It doesn't mean that there's stuff is going to bleed all four sides. It means that it can if you set it up that way. All right? You can add other guides, and I'll show you how to do this, because sometimes when you're designing a page or a spread, you want to have some blue lines that tell you, okay, this is the optical center of the page, or this is the halfway point. And in our periodical, we save the top half of the page for ads and the lower half of the page for copy. All right? Or we put photographs in the first column down to the halfway mark. This is all reserved for photos. Whatever it may be, depending upon the periodic. So you can add your own guides if you want. You're not just stuck with the ones that InDesign gives you. All right? Other stuff in preferences, there's something called Story Editor in there. And that's actually a word processor. There's no design there. It's just straightforward text. You type in the text right there. There's no fancy formatting or anything. You add the formatting later. But it allows you to you can spell check in there. You can do find and replace in there. You can do anything that you can do in a word processor, you can do under there. And you turn it on. You just go under the Edit menu, click Open Story Editor. You work in there, and then you go back to the actual article. All right? So this is what you're going to see when you open it up. And I guess it's time to do that. Everybody, open up an InDesign. And while you're waiting for InDesign to open up, you have your choice between glazed pumpkin cake donuts and apple cider cake donuts. And which one you choose will determine your grade on the next assignment. No, just kidding. All right, why don't you come on down and grab yourself a donut? Because a little bit of sugar goes a long way in this class, I know. That's just, Did you find InDesign CC? They left CS4 on the CAE computers. It may take it a while to load. And the reason that it's taking time to load is because it's got to load all of the fonts that go with CC. What is really cool is that the next time you open Word on one of these computers, I do believe that a lot of the Adobe fonts will become available to you in Word.
Or
5% no tax. Pretty expensive ones there. The census source, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Eating a little single tax.
I know. Did you get a completely black screen?
No.
Isn't that wonderful? If you're working in a dark room and the screen comes up dark like that, there should be more stuff coming. It's gonna offer you helpful hints. Yeah, tell it to go away. Pull down the InDesign menu at the top left and find Preferences. Oh, it's an InDesign file. Uh-oh.
No. It's like AutoCAD where you double click in the post.
What happened to it?
Under file.
It's under edit.
The Preferences under File menu?
It's under edit at the bottom.
It's under the Edit menu, excuse me. All right, to the bottom of the Preferences menu. And then go under General. Oh, Interface. Interface is the one where you can change it from pure black to some more reasonable. Yeah, where you can actually see what's going on. Ah, look at that. Now you can see what's going on. Okay. Then you go under File, New Document. New Document. And you'll get a choice. We'll come back to this in a minute. I'm gonna just take a look for a minute at the defaults. Oh, you opened up Illustrator?
Apparently.
Okay. All right, that's gonna be in a few weeks.
No, it's here now.
All right, here we
You can
go.
open up both.
All right. Are there any presets in there besides default? There shouldn't be anything on there. No, okay. All right, so a couple of things you can change up there. First of all, you can take a look at intent. And if you know you're going to be doing this for print, you can set it for print. If you know you're going to be doing it for online, you can set it for online. What are the other options? They give you a bunch of other things. Web, digital publishing. Okay, so leave it on print. Number of pages, we'll just stick with. We'll just stick with the basics. Don't change any of these other things. Just notice as you go down, the page size, the default is letter. And it looks like the default unit of measurement is 51 picas. So it's doing it in picas. You'll have to change that if you don't like working in picas. All right? It's got one column. No particular gutter because there's only one column. At the bottom, the margins, inside, outside, top side, bottom side. And you'll notice that there's a chain link in there, and it should be dark. If it's dark, that means that if you change one of the numbers, you change all four of them. So you don't have to retype all of that stuff. And the default is 3 picas, which is ½ an inch. So knowing all of this stuff, go ahead and hit OK, and you'll get a page. And there's your first page in InDesign. All right, so take a look up here at the top of my screen here, and you can follow along because it is going to be very similar. There are some slight differences between the Apple and the Windows. The top one up here is called the menu bar, and each one of these things represents a menu. The next one is the application bar. This tells you that you're working in InDesign. You should have, do you have the little bridge symbol next to it? Is it open on yours? Oh, it is. It's up. Okay, it's up in the top one. All right. It looks to me like yours is slightly different from mine, but that's okay. You've got all the same symbols. And then you've got the control panel. On the left-hand side, you got tools. You got the long strip of tools. And then on the other side, do you have any open panels? Are there any panels open on the right side there? Usually, I think the default is 4 or 5.
Yeah,
We got 6. All right, good. All right. So I'll take you through this very quickly, and then you can play with them. All right. If you are a real Windows fan, pull down the Window menu and click on Application Frame, and it'll look more like the Windows stuff that you're used to. If you're not a Windows fan, don't touch it. Is it under there? It should be. Window Application Frame? Doesn't have it. Arrange. Wait. Which one is it under? They moved it. Okay, try under try one workspace, next one down. Doesn't have it there either. Okay, they got rid of it. All right. If you're a Windows fan, no luck. You're out of luck. Sorry, they don't have that anymore. All right, so let's go through the menu bar. I'm not going to go through each one of these things, but under each one of the columns, there's lots and lots of stuff you can do. The view menu, we'll take a look at just one or two of these. The view menu helps you look at different parts of the screen. All right, there's zoom buttons. This one will move the whole page into the picture. This one will move the whole spread. A spread, of course, is two facing pages. All right. Actual size shows you what it would look like at a 100% if you were to print it on paper. Entire pasteboard. Now, the way this thing came about, the way all of this InDesign stuff started, was originally with the idea that they were looking at the way in which people design things using a pasteboard. What would happen, a designer would have the different elements in front of him or her. So there would be text, there would be pictures, and then there would be a big piece of cardboard. And they would paste down the text and the images where they wanted them to be. We used wax. It was removable, which was a really good thing. And it was wax, it was soft, it was adjustable, so that you could move things around very, very slightly. But that's the idea of having the pasteboard. Go ahead and click on entire pasteboard and see what you can see. You should see your page sitting there in the middle of nothingness. Okay, this is a recto. If there were a verso, it would be sitting right next to it. But you don't have a spread, you've only got the one. All right? So this is just a few of the things that you have available to you under that view menu. All right, the application bar. All right, it says InDesign, BR will give you the bridge. Okay, that'll take you to the bridge. I don't know if it's connected right now. I don't really want to fool with it. We can try that later. The next one is going to give you the zoom level. So you should have a number there with a percentage sign after it. And you can zoom in. You can really zoom way, way in. You can make it 4,000%, I think. Again, if you're a maniac and you're going to be moving things at 1/1000th of an inch, sure, you want to zoom in that much. View options, not terribly important. I rarely use it. I think you'd have to have a really big document to care too much about that. The same with screen mode. I'll show you a little bit more about screen mode. And then arranging documents. Again, it's for having multiple documents on the screen at one time. I doubt if you're going to be working with more than one at a time. But it's there if you want it. All right. This is the application bar, and I showed you some of these things already, right? The view options. All right. Now, control panels. All right. You should have, do you have a control panel across the top of the screen? You do. You have the one you have on top of the screen is called the object control panel. All right. This is a long strip that runs across the top. There are three kinds. There's character, paragraph, and object. The one you've got in front of you is object. I'll get to that in just a moment. The thing to know about this is that depending on what you've selected on the screen, that will change. So if you've got text and you select a few letters, it's going to change to the character control panel. If you've got text and you select the whole paragraph, it's going to change to the paragraph control panel. If you've got a picture, an object of some sort, it'll change to the object control panel. So it will change depending upon what you put your cursor on and what you click on. All right? Okay. Over here in the toolbox, two of the tools that you need to know. The first at the top is the black arrow. That's called the selection tool. It's called the selection tool. So if you want to select a text box or an object on the screen, use the black arrow to click on it. If you want to select text, you select the big capital T. It's the fourth one down. Oh, that's called the text tool. All right? Each of these, there are a lot more behind these, and I'll show you those in just a minute. All right, so this is what the three control panels look like. The one you have open right now is object. It should look like this, right? Does it look something like that? All right. So this actually represents an object, something that would be on the screen that you'd be working with. And over here you've got the X and Y. That's the position of where it is. Actually, it's where the position of the black box is. The black box is the anchor point. All right? So it will tell you where the anchor point, and you can change it by clicking on any of the others. If you want to click on the center, the X and the Y will change. But the initial measurement is taken from the top left corner of the page. So the top left corner of the page is 0, 0. You guys do this all the time, right, with graphing? So I don't have to explain to you about how the whole graphing thing works, the X and Y axis stuff. Yes, please say yes. Okay, it's scary when I get, every once in a while I get an English major in here, and, you know, I sort of have to do a math lecture. All right, so we're measuring from the top left corner. This particular object is going to be 6 picas, which is 1 inch from the top and 1 inch from the left. Then, how big is the object? It'll tell you here it's 39 picas wide, 54 picas long, or high. And again, there's a link over here. And the deal with the link is this. Let's say you've got something 39 picas wide, but you only want it to be 24. But you don't want it to get real, you want it to increase to scale, right? You decrease to scale, right? So to get it to decrease to scale, you click on the link. When the link turns dark, you change one of these, the other one will change too. If you only want to change the width, break the link, change the width, and the thing will shrink. All right? So why don't you try that right now? Why don't you go over to that toolbar on the left-hand side, and you should see, about halfway down there's a little gray box, a little gray square. Yeah, take that and draw a square on the screen, and now you've got the object, right? You've got an object. You just drew a whole bunch of them. That's cool. All right. So you can see how big it is. You can see where it's located. And you can see if you break the chain, you can change. If you break the link, you can change one dimension, not the other dimension. All right? Now, if you want to scale it by percentage, you can do it the next one over here. This is to scale it by percentages. Right? Then this one will change the angle. So go ahead and play with that for a minute. It starts at 0 degrees. Just click one of the up arrow or the down arrow, and you'll see the thing will rotate around. It'll rotate around the anchor point. So if you want it to rotate around a different point, you need to go up to the top to here and change the anchor point. Yeah. You have to, if you want to change the anchor point, you change it over here. Then you can move the object around. You getting that? That's pretty straightforward, right? Okay, then the one below that is skew. All right, you can play with that. You got a bunch of different rotators over here. These go 90, 90, 90, 90 degrees at a time. This one reflects left to right. This one reflects top to bottom. All right, and that's, all right, I'll let you play with one more because it's just too much fun to. All right, over here, you should have 2 of these things, one on top of the other with a red stripe through them. Have you got those? All right, the red stripe, right next to it, there's a little black arrow. Click on the black arrow and you should see a bunch of colors. So the top one up here is the fill, and the bottom one is the stroke. So the fill is what's the inside your box, and the stroke is the border or key line, as the case may be. Go ahead and change the colors. Have fun. This is a fun thing to do. If you want to change the thickness of the key line, go to the next box over here. It should say 0 points. And you can make it thicker or thinner as the case may be. Did you notice what the default colors are? Pull down that menu again for a second and look at the colors. Did you see what they are? You've got cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, which is for printing on paper. And you've got red, green, and blue, which is for use on a screen. Use on a screen. So you've got a basic palette of colors. There are actually billions of colors, but I'm not going to tell you all about them now because this class would go on forever. All right, so that's the story with the object. So now what I'd like you to do is to go over to that tool panel on the left-hand side and take that letter T, right, click on that, and then go down somewhere in the middle of the page and drag across to create a box, and you can type your name in that box. Anywhere on the page. Go ahead and type your name. And the first thing you'll notice is that it is now switched to the character panel. It's no longer not. You see this? Did you see it switch? It should have the A, the dark A, yes, at the top there. Now, if you take that black arrow and click on the box with the text in it, no, not on the text, but on the box. Click on the box with the black. You got the black arrow selected? Grab the black arrow tool. All right, and then it should switch to this one. Okay? Did it switch?
The paragraph?
To paragraph?
Change the object one.
It now changed to object? Okay, my goof. All right, go back and select it with the text tool with the T. All right, what are the defaults? What's the default font? Minion Pro? Yeah. 10 on 12? Or 12 on 14.4? Okay. And Minion Pro regular? Pull down the regular, see how many different kinds of Minion Pro there are. How many did you get? More than Bill Gates does. Right? Yeah. All right. Make your name larger and try out some of those others. Just see how it looks. Try some of them. Make it nice and big so you can see the changes. Now what you'll notice is that with the character panel, this part is all about the character, and this part over here is all about the paragraph. If you switch to the paragraph menu, this part is all about the paragraph, and this part is all about the character. You actually get both with either of those. Did you see that? All right, other stuff you can do over there. You'll see you've got all caps, small caps, right? You'll see that you've got superscript, subscript, you've got underline, strike through. All right. Now, do you see where it says VA, Veterans Administration? Up there on the character menu? All right. That's for kerning. What I'd like you to do is select 2 letters in your name. Any 2 letters will do. Just pick 2 letters. All right. Go under that VA where it now says metrics. Okay. Make it optical and tell me what happens. Any change? A little bit? All right. Okay, what optical does is it switches it to, metrics is the basic setup that the designer put in there. Optical is refined. It makes it look better. Then go under the bigger VA, the one without the slash in the bottom, and start changing that number, and that will decrease the space between the letters or increase it, as the case may be. And you can change it. You can make it huge. You can make it humongous. You can make it really, really tight. You can make it really, really, yeah, there you go. Now you're squeezing poor Ben. Goodbye, Ben. Hello, Ben. All right, so this is kerning. This is what you've got here. You've got kerning. All right. Okay. Now, a couple of others over here. These 2, the T with the arrow that goes up and down, and the T with the arrow that goes sideways. These are for adjusting the shape of the characters to make them wider or taller or narrower or smaller. But you should know that it doesn't always work and it doesn't always look terribly good. If you're trying desperately to squeeze an extra word onto a line of type and you go down to 96%, it's going to be okay. But if you take it down to 85%, it's going to look really scrawny. That's not the way it was designed to look. Don't play with those things. All right. The other one up there is the paragraph controls. So you can see that you have different ways of aligning the text. And then these are indents. Okay. So the character panel, the A is dark. That's how you know you're working with the character panel. And if you want to go back to paragraph, you can just click on the paragraph sign. You can go back and forth between these two. Very, very easy to do that. All right. I showed you this one already. The status of the objects. This is the reference point, the anchor point. Everything will rotate about that. Now what will happen is at some point you'll try to import a photograph, and then the photograph will be enormous, and you'll try to shrink it down to fit on the page, and you'll get a message from InDesign saying, if you do this, it's going to fall right off the page or off the paste board. And it's because you've got an anchor point that's somewhere off the page, and it's just going to shrink it down that way. You need to pick, usually it's better if you pick the center anchor point, and then you can move it around to where you want it to go. All right, 2 more buttons, and then I'll let you go. Over on the right-hand side, you've got a flash of lightning. Some people love it, some people hate it. I never use it, but it's there. You should know. Okay, it's called Quick Apply. If you click on it, it'll give you a list of different styles, and then you can decide which style you want to apply, and boom, it's right there. It's got, it should have all the styles. Character styles, paragraph styles, object styles, any style you've created will be in there. And I believe there are a whole bunch of defaults that they give you in InDesign, styles that they like. Yeah, you can try them if you want. There's basic paragraph, there's a whole bunch of others. But I never use it, I use my own styles. The other button over here, this is much better. This is the fun button. This is what makes InDesign one of the greatest time wasters in the entire world. You have to promise me you won't flunk out of school because of this thing. Okay? It's the options button. And for just about every single menu that you've got, there's going to be an options button that lets you pull down all kinds of really cool stuff. Quick, fast select your name with the type tool. Okay? Can you do that? And then pull down the options button. Can you see some of the choices that you have in there? The ligatures, you've got the open type choices. You've got all these different choices for lining, for small caps, for slash zeros, drop caps, all this other cool stuff. It's all hiding in there. And it's like that for all the menus. Isn't that wonderful? All right. We'll come back on Thursday. We'll do a lot more with InDesign. Questions, problems, things I need to know about? Nothing? Okay, I guess the last thing is this. Under workspaces, you'll find a bunch of different presets, and depending upon what kind of project you're working on, you might want to start out with these things. If you click on these things, it'll give you a set of panels on the right-hand side that InDesign thinks you might want to use. You can add more panels if you want. You can get rid of the panels if you don't use them. But it's kind of a default set of workspaces that you can use. If you've got it on your own computer and you use it all the time, you might have, as I do on my computer, you might have Steve's workspace. That's got the panels that I use all the time. And it doesn't have any of the panels that I never use. All right, that's it. We're done. I will see you back here on Thursday. Don't forget to turn in the homework.